The grand hall of the alien court was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Tall crystal pillars stretched toward the ceiling, glowing faintly with living light. Strange banners written in curved alien script hung between them, and the floor reflected, like polished glass. The air smelled faintly of spice, and everywhere he turned, alien eyes followed him with suspicion. Elias was the first human ever allowed inside the imperial court of the Lumerians, one of the most powerful alien empires in the galaxy. Earth had only recently been noticed by the greater civilizations, and even then, most saw humans as small, unimportant, and fragile. He had been sent here as an envoy, both to prove Earth's worth and to keep the Empire from crushing humanity, before it had a chance to grow. He walked carefully, aware that one wrong move could insult their customs. Servants with shimmering robes glided across the hall, carrying trays of glowing fruit. Alien nobles whispered behind jeweled masks, their words like music, yet heavy with judgment. Elias kept his head high, though inside, his heart pounded. He had been trained for months in Lumerian culture and language. Still, nothing had prepared him for the cold stares. He reminded himself of his mission: stay calm, represent humanity with dignity, and never, ever show fear. That evening, after the summit of nobles ended, Elias wandered through the palace corridors. His guide had left him alone for a brief moment to fetch instructions, and Elias, curious as always, decided to look around. He walked past doors carved with symbols, past gardens glowing with bioluminescent trees. One door, however, stood slightly open. From inside, he heard a faint hum, like a song carried on the wind. He hesitated, but curiosity pushed him forward. Elias stepped inside. The chamber was smaller than the great hall, but far more beautiful. Silver curtains floated in the air, as if moved by invisible streams. At the center stood a tall figure, her back to him. She was practicing with a long ceremonial blade, moving with swift and graceful strikes. The song he had heard was her voice humming in rhythm to her training. It took only a moment for her to sense him. The figure spun instantly. The blade flashed like lightning, and Elias froze. Before he could even blink, the weapon's edge stopped, just a breath away from his throat. Her eyes were like two burning sapphires, sharp and full of fire. She was tall, elegant, her silver hair flowing like a waterfall. She wore the crest of the royal family. Elias realized with shock who she was: Princess Serenia, heir to the throne of the Lumerian Empire. Her voice was sharp, commanding. Who dares enter without permission? Elias raised both hands slowly. His training told him to bow, to apologize, to show fear. But instead he found himself strangely calm. I'm Elias of Earth, he said simply. I didn't mean to intrude. The door was open. The princess narrowed her eyes, the blade unmoving. A human, she hissed. Your kind knows nothing of respect. Give me one reason not to call the guards. Elias looked straight into her eyes. He could feel the cold edge of her blade near his skin, yet he refused to step back. His voice was steady. Because I walked in by mistake, not malice, and because if you wanted me dead, you would have already struck. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Serenia studied him closely, as though trying to see into his very soul. No alien had ever spoken to her like that. Most cowered before her, begging for mercy. But this human, this fragile being, looked at her without trembling. Finally, with a graceful motion, she lowered the blade. You are reckless, she said. Reckless or foolish. Or honest, Elias replied. Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile, but not full disdain either. She turned her back to him, continuing her practice. Leave, before I change my mind. Elias bowed slightly, then walked out of the chamber. He did not rush, though his heart beat like thunder. When the door closed behind him, he let out a long breath. Later that night, in the princess's private chambers, Serenia sat quietly by the window, staring at the stars. She could not forget the human's eyes. Fragile, yes, but there was something in them. Unyielding, steady, as if his spirit refused to bend. Strange, she whispered to herself. Why did I not strike? Humans were supposed to be weak, yet this one had looked at her as if he were equal. That thought unsettled her. And for the first time in many years, Princess Serenia felt curious. Meanwhile, Elias returned to his quarters. His guide scolded him for wandering, warning that he could have been executed for entering a royal chamber uninvited. Elias only nodded, pretending to listen. But inside, he smiled. He had looked death in the eyes today and walked away unharmed. More importantly, he had learned something about the alien princess. She was quick, proud, and dangerous, but also restrained. And if she was capable of restraint, then maybe, just maybe, humans had a chance to earn respect in this empire. He lay on his bed, staring at the alien ceiling above him. Tomorrow, the negotiations would continue. Tomorrow, the court would test him again. But tonight, Elias remembered the fire in Serenia's eyes. The first true connection between human and alien had been made, not with words of politics, but in a clash of instinct, steel, and courage. And deep inside, Elias knew this was only the beginning of something far greater. The next morning, the Grand Council chamber of the Lumerian Empire was alive with whispers. Dozens of nobles sat upon floating platforms that circled the center stage. Their robes shimmered like liquid stars, and their jeweled masks hid sharp, judging eyes. Servants drifted quietly between them, carrying glowing scrolls of law and history. Elias stood at the center platform, a lone human among giants. He wore a simple dark uniform with the emblem of Earth stitched onto his chest. Compared to the glittering alien robes, he looked plain, even unworthy. Yet his posture was straight, his gaze firm. He was here to speak for humanity, though he knew most of them had already dismissed his people as irrelevant. A noble with a golden mask leaned forward. His voice echoed like thunder. This is the human envoy? Small, fragile. He will not survive one season on the border worlds, yet he dares to speak for an entire planet. Another noble, cloaked in green silk, let out a cold laugh. Why do we waste time? Earth is young, untested. Their fleets are dust compared to ours. They should kneel, not negotiate. Elias let the words wash over him. He had expected scorn. What mattered was how he responded. He took a slow breath and spoke. Humans do not kneel. We stand. Even when the storm is stronger, even when the night is darker, we endure. That is our way. The chamber erupted with mocking laughter. To the nobles, his words sounded like foolish pride. But one pair of eyes did not laugh. From her elevated throne, Princess Serenia watched silently. Her blade encounter with Elias the night before still echoed in her mind. The human's composure now, surrounded by ridicule yet refusing to break, only deepened her curiosity. The debate dragged on for hours. Nobles accused humanity of arrogance. Others warned that humans might one day become dangerous if allowed to grow unchecked. A few younger nobles, however, whispered that humans showed a spark worth noticing. The High Chancellor finally raised his staff for silence. His mask was plain but heavy with authority. We will test this human. Words are wind. Let us see if his people's actions match their mouths. A murmur spread across the chamber. Tests were rare and dangerous. What test do you propose? Serenia asked, her voice calm but commanding. The Chancellor's eyes glowed faintly behind his mask. There is unrest on the border worlds. Rival houses prepare for conflict. Let the human envoy offer a solution. If he fails, Earth's voice will never again be heard in this court. Elias felt the weight of 1,000 stares. His mind raced. To solve a dispute between alien houses was beyond anything Earth had trained him for. But he forced himself to nod. Then I accept. If humanity is to be judged, let it be by what we do, not by what we look like. The nobles laughed again, but Serenia's gaze sharpened. She wanted to see how far this human would go. Later, in the palace gardens, Elias walked alone. The trees glowed faintly in the twilight, their leaves shimmering like fireflies. He sat on a stone bench trying to think. How could he solve a conflict between alien houses when he barely understood their politics? Footsteps approached. Elias turned and saw Princess Serenia. She stood tall, her silver robes trailing behind her, her expression unreadable. The soft glow of the trees reflected in her sapphire eyes. "You are either the bravest or the most foolish envoy I have ever seen," she said. "Do you realize what you agreed to? If you fail, your entire species will be silenced in this empire." Elias met her gaze. "If humanity is worth anything, then we cannot be silent. We must be heard. Even if we fail, at least we tried." Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying him. "Your kind speaks with too much fire for such fragile bodies. Do you not fear death?" "Every human fears death," Elias replied quietly, "but we do not let that fear decide our path." Serenia was silent for a moment. Then, to Elias's surprise, she sat on the bench opposite him. Her presence was overwhelming, but she spoke more softly now. "The houses that quarrel have hated each other for centuries. Even my father could barely keep them from war. What makes you think a human can succeed where emperors have failed?" Elias gave a faint smile. "Because I'm not bound by their old grudges. I see things differently. Sometimes an outsider sees solutions insiders cannot." Serenia tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. "Perhaps. Or perhaps." The morning sun glinted off the crystalline walls of the Lumerian command tower as Elias prepared for his first real test. Today, he would leave the safety of the Imperial Court and step onto the border worlds, the disputed planets where rival alien houses had clashed for generations. The Empire wanted him to fail, and the nobles had no faith in humans. But Elias had something they did not: courage, creativity, and an unwillingness to accept defeat. Princess Serenia arrived shortly after. Her silver robes shimmered as she walked beside him. She did not smile, nor did she speak lightly. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, watched every movement he made. She was a master warrior, and her presence reminded Elias that one false step could cost him everything. "You realize what this mission is?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried authority. "I do," Elias replied. "I also know that sometimes a different perspective can solve what tradition cannot." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing further. She had seen humans before, but never one so calm, so determined in the face of the impossible. Perhaps this one was different. The transport ship took off from the Imperial Palace, its hull slicing through the violet morning sky. Elias and Serenia sat across from each other, watching the stars stretch into lines of light as they jumped through subspace. "The nobles do not trust you," Serenia said finally. "Many of them hope you fail. Do you understand that?" Elias met her gaze without hesitation. "I understand, and I am prepared." "Prepared?" she repeated. "You do not even know their politics. You do not know the terrain. You have no ships of your own, and yet you speak as if you are certain of success." Elias smiled faintly. "I am certain that fear does not solve problems. Humans adapt. We find solutions where others see none. That is what I bring." Serenia studied him silently, intrigued despite herself. She had never encountered such confidence in a species she considered weak. When they arrived at the border world, the devastation of centuries of conflict was clear. Cities were abandoned, forests burned, and alien patrols moved cautiously across the landscape. Rival houses still clashed in small skirmishes, and the tension was almost tangible. Elias stepped out onto the landing platform, the weight of alien eyes following him. Serenia accompanied him, her blade at her side, though she made no move to draw it. Her presence was a warning to the others. This human was under her watch. A scout from one of the rival houses approached, armored and wary. "You are the human?" the alien said, voice sharp. "We have no need of your species. Leave or die." Elias bowed slightly. "I am here not to fight, but to find peace. I know it may seem impossible, but I believe there is a solution that benefits both houses." The alien scoffed. "Impossible is our nature. Humans cannot change what we are. Elias took a slow breath. Then perhaps you have never seen what humans can do when we are determined. The expedition moved forward cautiously, navigating through scorched forests and crumbling cities. Serenia observed Elias at every step. Where alien officers relied on brute strength and rigid plans, Elias noticed patterns, exploited weaknesses, and suggested strategies that others would not dare. At one point, a bridge collapsed ahead of them. The alien officers panicked, unsure how to cross the chasm. Elias looked at the debris, the fallen supports, and the loose rocks. He quickly designed a simple pulley system using ropes and spare materials from their packs. Within minutes, they crossed safely. Serenia could not hide her surprise. Even though he was physically weaker, he was adaptable, quick-thinking, clever, perhaps more dangerous than any soldier she had ever trained. That night, the group camped near the edge of a ruined city. Fires burned, casting flickering shadows over tired faces. The alien officers whispered about the human, questioning whether he was truly capable. But Serenia remained silent, sitting apart and observing him. "You are not like the others," she said finally, walking to sit beside him. "You think differently. You do not follow their rules." "Why?" Elias shrugged. "Because humans must survive in ways others do not. Our strength is not just in our weapons or numbers. It is in our minds, our ability to adapt, and our willingness to risk everything to protect what we care about." Serenia listened, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Risk everything, even yourself?" "Even myself," Elias replied simply. "Because if I fail, someone else will pay. But if I succeed, lives can be saved." The princess said nothing more, but inside she felt a strange respect growing. Perhaps humans were not the weak creatures she had always assumed. Perhaps they were something more, something dangerous, clever, and inspiring. The next day, the true test arrived. Rival houses prepared for battle in a narrow valley, their fleets lined with weapons. Alien officers expected Elias to panic, to run to beg. But he did none of those things. He moved calmly among the commanders, suggesting strategies that seemed foolish at first, but relied on speed, coordination, and deception. Where the aliens relied on brute force, Elias relied on human ingenuity. When the first shots rang out, his plans worked. Alien ships were misled, ground forces outmaneuvered, and casualties were minimized. Even Serenia had to admit silently that the humans' tactics were remarkable. For the first time, some of the alien officers began to see humanity in a new light. Not weak, not fragile, not foolish, capable, resilient, clever. By the end of the engagement, the rival houses had agreed to a temporary truce, astonished by the human envoy who had outsmarted centuries of conflict. Elias stood tall among the alien officers, exhausted but proud. Serenia approached him afterward, her expression unreadable but her eyes glowing faintly. "You survived," she said, "and you changed their minds, at least for now." Elias smiled, though he was weary. "Humans endure, that is what we do." The princess studied him for a long moment. Deep down, she realized something important. This human was unlike any being she had ever known. He had something no alien could predict, a spark of ingenuity, courage, and an unbreakable will, and she knew, though she did not yet say it aloud, that humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun. The border world had fallen silent after the skirmish, but the victory brought no real peace. Rival alien houses retreated to their strongholds, suspicious and plotting revenge. The temporary truce held only by fragile threads. Elias knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Winning a single battle did not change centuries of distrust. "Princess," Serenia walked beside him along the charred fields, her silver robes swaying in the wind. Her eyes, as sharp as ever, scanned the horizon. "You have surprised them," she said quietly. "But you have also made enemies." Elias nodded. "That was unavoidable. Change always makes enemies." She stopped and faced him. "Do you understand the history of this place?" These planets have been at war for centuries. Your victory is temporary unless you understand the past. I am willing to learn, Elias said, and humans have learned something too. Fear is not the only way to survive. Serenia studied him in silence. His calmness, even here at the edge of danger, unsettled her. Most aliens would have panicked or tried to strike first. Elias had done neither. Back at the palace, the Imperial archives revealed secrets long buried. Ancient records spoke of a warrior race that had once challenged the Lemurian Empire, strong, fearless, and cunning. Their technology rivaled the Ai empires, but they vanished mysteriously centuries ago. Some scholars whispered that humans might share distant ancestry with these warriors. Most dismissed it as myth, yet a few began to watch Elias closely. The nobles who had hoped to see the Yao, human fail, grew uneasy. If this fragile species had echoes of the past's greatest challengers, perhaps they were not so weak after all. Meanwhile, in private chambers, Serenia reviewed the battle reports. Every tactic Elias had used was unconventional, unpredictable, and effective. She realized that humans did not rely on tradition. They relied on creativity, adaptability, and determination. That is dangerous, she muttered to herself. A species that cannot be predicted is hard to control and harder to defeat. While Elias prepared for the next diplomatic mission, subtle threats emerged. Anonymous messages warned him to leave the empire immediately. Rumors circulated among the nobles. Some believed humans were a threat that must be eliminated before they grew stronger. Elias remained unshaken. Fear was natural, but letting it guide one's actions was weakness. He trained quietly, studied the records of the border houses, and devised strategies not just for diplomacy but for survival. Serenia observed all of this silently. Her respect for him grew daily, though she refused to voice it. Unlike the nobles, who relied on fear and strength, Elias relied on foresight, reasoning, and an unyielding spirit. One night, Serenia visited Elias without warning. She found him in his quarters, reviewing maps of the disputed territories. His expression was focused, almost serene. "You never rest," she said, arms crossed. "I do not fear the unknown," Elias replied. "I study it, prepare for it. That is how humans survive." Serenia paced, thinking. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. You do not act as others expect. You make your own rules." "I do what must be done," Elias said simply. "Rules are tools, not prisons." The princess stopped, staring at him. She could not hide her admiration. This human had no weapons as powerful as theirs, no fleets of his own, and yet he commanded attention and respect through thought alone. Her voice. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting a pale glow on the border world's rugged terrain. Smoke from the previous battles still drifted across the valleys, and distant alarms echoed as scattered fleets tried to regroup. Elias stood at the command platform, observing the battlefield below. The rival houses had grown restless, preparing to strike again, more violently this time. Princess Serenia joined him, her expression tense. She had fought beside him before, yet she felt the weight of the coming challenge. "They will not wait," she said quietly. "This attack will be larger. They intend to overwhelm you and test Earth's resolve." Elias nodded. "Then we must be ready. Humans endure, and endurance is stronger than steel." Serenia's eyes softened slightly. She had come to respect the human's courage, though she had never admitted it aloud. Still, the threat was real, and failure could mean total annihilation of the human, contingent, and perhaps Earth's place in the Empire. The enemy fleet emerged from the shadow of a nearby moon, their ships larger and more heavily armed than anything the Empire's forces had seen. Alien officers panicked, unsure how to counter such overwhelming firepower, yet Elias remained calm, calmly issuing orders. "Divide your forces into 3 groups," he instructed. "One will lure them into the canyon, another will ambush from above, and the third, our smallest, fastest units, will flank from behind. Trust speed, not size." Serena watched him amazed. Even though he had no personal fleet of his own, his strategy was precise and clear. The aliens had relied on power alone for centuries. Elias relied on human creativity. The first wave of enemy ships descended, confident in their superiority. But as Elias had predicted, the smaller human-led units moved swiftly, striking unexpected angles. The canyon became a trap, and the enemy fleet faltered. Still, the battle was far from over. Hours passed. The enemy adapted, sending reinforcements. Alien officers grew frustrated. Their ships were stronger, their weapons sharper, yet they could not predict Elias's tactics. The human envoy, though physically weak, was proving more dangerous than any seasoned warrior. Serena's concern grew. She knew victory would require more than ingenuity. It would demand sacrifice. As night fell, the enemy launched a massive assault on the command platform itself. The humans and a few loyal Lumerian officers were trapped. Panic rose among the soldiers, and chaos threatened to consume the battlefield. Elias turned to Serena. "There is only one way to survive. I will draw their attention. You lead the rest to safety." Her eyes widened. "No, I will not let you. It is the only way," Elias interrupted firmly. "Humans protect others, even at great risk to ourselves. That is our way." Serena's jaw tightened. She realized the truth in his words. He had already calculated the odds. He had already accepted the danger, just as humans always did when others' lives depended on them. Elias moved forward, stepping into the open as enemy fire rained down. His goal was simple: draw the enemy into a trap, giving the remaining forces a chance to escape. Serena led the soldiers through secret tunnels, her mind racing with worry. From the edge of the canyon, she watched Elias. Bullets and energy blasts struck near him, yet he moved with determination, luring the enemy exactly as he had planned. The enemy commander, a towering alien general, realized too late that they were walking into an ambush. Human ingenuity had outsmarted centuries of brute force. Elias's actions had shifted the battle in a single, precise moment. Inside the tunnels, Serena guided the forces to safety, checking every passage, every corner. When the last soldier was secure, she paused, listening for the sounds of battle. The canyon fell silent, then erupted with a deafening blast. Elias had completed his mission. The enemy fleet was disoriented, trapped in the canyon, and the remaining soldiers had survived. Yet he had been caught in the chaos, exposed and vulnerable. Serena felt a pang of fear she had never expected. She had come to respect him, not just as an envoy, but as a leader, as a being who could inspire loyalty and courage in even the most skeptical aliens. When she reached the edge of the battlefield, the sight stunned her. Elias was standing, weary but alive, surrounded by wreckage. The enemy ships had been repelled and their forces scattered. Despite his exhaustion, he gave a small nod to her. You did it," she said, her voice catching. "You risked everything." Elias smiled faintly, though fatigue weighed on him. "That is what humans do. We endure, we adapt. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is our legacy." Serena stared at him, realizing the full weight of his actions. This human had changed her perception completely. Where she had expected weakness, she had found courage. Where she had expected fear, she had found unshakable will. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit something quietly. Humanity was not to be underestimated. By dawn, the battlefield was quiet. Enemy remnants fled and the surviving soldiers tended to their wounded. The alien officers, once skeptical, now whispered in awe. They had seen something new. Humans, fragile in body but unstoppable in spirit. Elias, though exhausted, stood tall. Serena approached, her hand brushing his shoulder briefly, a gesture of respect, admiration, and acknowledgement of the bond forged in fire. "You have shown them," she said softly. "And me. Humanity is stronger than I imagined." Elias nodded. "We are. Not because we are the largest or the strongest or the fastest, because we refuse to yield. Because we endure. Because we inspire others to do the same. The princess studied him for a long moment. Deep down, she knew this was more than a single battle. This was a turning point, not just for the border worlds, not just for the empire, but for humanity itself. Ilias had proven something profound, that courage, intelligence, and selflessness could overcome even the greatest of odds. And in doing so, he had begun to carve out the human legacy among the stars. The morning sky over the border world was calm, almost peaceful. Smoke from the previous battles had faded, leaving only the scars of war across the valleys. The rival houses, shaken by Elias's daring strategies and unyielding courage, were regrouping, but not for long. The alien empire's council gathered once more, this time in solemn silence. Many nobles had come to witness the results of humanity's actions. Where they had expected failure, they found victory. Where they had expected weakness, they found strength, creativity, and resilience. Princess Serenia stood beside Elias, her silver robes flowing gracefully. She had watched him endure, adapt, and inspire. His efforts had not only protected the soldiers and civilians of the border worlds, but had also changed the perceptions of an entire empire. The human envoy has done more than survive, she said quietly to the council. He has shown that humans are capable, courageous, and worthy of respect. Their legacy begins today, the council murmured among themselves. Some nobles were unwilling to admit it, still clinging to pride and tradition. Others nodded, finally acknowledging the truth. Humans were not insignificant. Elias remained humble, standing straight with quiet dignity. I acted not alone, but with those willing to trust me, he said. The humans of Earth believe in endurance, ingenuity, and cooperation. Today we have proven that even a small species can make a difference when courage and intelligence guide us. Serena's eyes glimmered faintly. She realized that this human, though seemingly fragile, carried something far stronger than any alien weapon. An unbreakable will, a mind that could see solutions others overlooked, and the ability to inspire loyalty and courage in all who followed him. In the following days, the Empire formally acknowledged humanity's achievements. The rival houses agreed to a more lasting truce, impressed by the human-led strategies that had minimized loss and prevented disaster. For the first time, humans were not dismissed as minor players. They were respected, even feared for their ingenuity and unpredictability. Elias toured the border worlds, helping to repair cities and train both humans and alien officers in cooperation. His approach was simple: adapt, learn, and lead with both mind and heart. Everywhere he went, humans earned admiration. Even the most skeptical aliens began to recognize the value of a species that refused to bow to fear. Serena often walked beside him, sometimes in silence, sometimes discussing strategy and diplomacy. She had once believed humans were weak, unworthy of consideration. But now, standing with Elias on the edge of a cliff overlooking the repaired settlements, she realized the truth. Humans were something extraordinary. "You have changed the Empire," she said quietly, her voice carrying over the wind. "Not by force, but by courage and ingenuity. That is unusual for your species." Elias smiled faintly. "We humans endure. That is our legacy. Strength is not only in weapons, but in perseverance and in inspiring others to rise when hope seems lost." Serena nodded, the wind blowing, her silver hair across her face. Deep down, she understood that humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning, and that it would leave a mark no empire could ignore. The rival alien fleets, still wary, tested humanity one final time. Elias's plans had prepared both human and alien forces for every scenario. When the enemy attacked, they were met with coordinated tactics, clever maneuvers, and unwavering courage. Human unpredictability turned the tide once more. Ships that seemed weak moved like shadows across the battlefield, outmaneuvering larger, heavier fleets. Even seasoned alien commanders began to whisper, "Perhaps humans